today we have our brother here. We have the honor, the high honor, I might add, of introducing and interviewing our brother, Chaz Pringle. Now, before we get into the particulars, I'm going to give a brief summation of your dossier. Won't go too hard, just a brief.
Drama.
So, today we have a college educated man, LIM. You did your undergraduate work there. You have certificates from both UPenn and London School of Business. You are a man of God. Cannot do an introduction without saying that. You are the consummate friend. You're a son. You are a brother. You are a smart, nimble businessman. You're a consultant. You have your own business as well. And you have much corporate success to tout about. So that's my rendition of your intro. So to open this up, I'm going to toss the first question to you. Chaz, what would be your elevator pitch if you were introducing yourself?
That's a really good question. So my elevator pitch would first start off not with what I do, but who I am. So for sure would include all of the characteristics that you just described, and I would add to that really a man of integrity, right? Because any business relationship, any friendship, any romantic relationship starts with integrity for me, right? It has to feel good. There needs to be reciprocity. And so it would start there to make sure that the other party understands who I am and my intentions.
So I'm going to ask a simple question before I toss to Fred. Why? Why is it important to you?
Well, I think in this world today, right, especially with business, we're so overwhelmed with the thought of money or what can I get out of this? And it really takes away from the beauty of what a true partnership is, right? Is with setting an intention and a goal for both parties to be able to work towards. And we've just been taught throughout the years to be selfish. So it's me, 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 me. How is this going to benefit me? How can I post this on social media? And if it's not really working in my favor, I don't want to do it. And sometimes in life, it doesn't necessarily work in your favor. It's a sacrifice for someone else to be able to, you know, gain partnership, gain insight, gain exposure. So yeah, that's my answer.
All right. Wow. Yeah. Once again, I'm definitely excited for this interview. But
Me too.
Yeah. So once again, we kind of met through Kevin, but it feels like we've known each other pretty much forever, which is pretty wild. But kind of going back, like, where did you grow up? Like, and what were some of the other values that you learned as you were going throughout life in the beginning?
Okay. So picture it, 1992. No, so I'm originally, I'm not, we're on the West Coast, but I'm not a West Coast native. I am from a cold place called Rochester, New York. And one of the morals that I could really say growing up was that really was impactful for me, and that still is very much so the foundation of who I am and how I move throughout life is faith. My uncle Abraham Parker was a pastor. I grew up very much so under his leadership in church and out of church. Gotcha. I was raised the only child. And so I spent a lot of time because they lived around the corner from me. So I spent a lot of time with him and my Aunt Catherine. And so I was always around, wisdom, insight, which I did not understand. I was like, what is y'all talking about? Like, I don't want nobody, 9-year-old hanging out with, at that age, they were definitely in their 60s, right? 50s, 60s. And so, yeah, it was just that, and my grandmother raised me as well. So I was always around wisdom is what I would have to say. Yeah.
Wow. And you were kind of just like absorbing that.
Oh, every day.
It's like, even though I don't want to hear this, it's still
every day
sticking with you. Okay. So at what you're doing now, you're in consulting and in fashion, I believe.
That's one aspect. Yeah.
One aspect. Good. So now I can hear the other aspects. So let's start with fashion. How did you start really kind of getting into that, and where was the spark or the beginning that you're like, I think this is where I see myself going?
Yeah. So that started very much so through my mother, right? My mother is a creative naturally. Home decor, her daily choice of how she dresses, how she chooses to express herself,
Yeah.
from eyewear to the clothes she puts on to the shoes she wears. And so that was instilled in me from a very young age. And so I began, that's actually how I learned how to tell a story, right?
Wow.
And so I was very passionate about it, still am to this day. And so I was like, when it came to the conversation of college, I was like, okay, I don't want to be a doctor, don't want to be a lawyer. You know, I knew that there was a creative that was inside of me, but I didn't necessarily know in what capacity.
I see.
But I always had a heart for business. I love being able to understand the why, right? And so I discovered LIM College, and I knew that this was the only college that I was interested in attending. And believe it or not, it's the only college that I applied for. So thank God that it worked out. I started an application at FIT, and I actually didn't even finish it. Yep. And then I started another one at Villa Maria in Buffalo, and I didn't finish that one either. And so I knew LIM didn't have a choice, right? I was gonna knock that door down.
And so pause for a second. So LIM and FIT, for those that don't know, what do those stand for, and where are those?
Yeah, so both schools are in New York. Some would say that they're probably rival colleges, right? LIM is more so the business aspect of fashion versus FIT is more prone to designers, right? And I knew that I did not want to be a designer. I'm like, I don't have that gift. But I do have the gift of understanding how to operate and run a business, right? And make sure that it's profitable.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so I did that. I went to school at LIM, and then I studied abroad in London, which blew my mind and expanded my vision of how I saw my life, for sure. Yeah.
So, a couple of things bubbled up when you were giving your narrative. Two things that are quite consistent is wisdom and faith. So, given who you are and in the multiplicity of businesses that you work within, you know, because it's beauty, it's skincare, it's merchandising, so on and so forth. How do you use those two values or concepts to navigate the type of work that you do? Who do you work with? How you do work? Do you find that those values or concepts influence the way you do things?
Absolutely. So I love that you put those two together because they are two very great tool sets to have. And I would say even necessary across any platform of business. Wisdom is used to be applicable to the strategies that you come up with, right? And that you are trying to implement to improve your business, start your business. And faith is needed to endure, right? Whether you look at it from a religious or belief system practice, anyone that has a successful business has had to keep the faith to see it from a seed to a tree.
I see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna double down on that question because we're in LA. It's a place known for fashion. I don't know many people in your industry, right? But what I do know in the instances that I've interacted with people in the industry, I don't get this sense. So this sense meaning this sense of some of the values that you've espoused, and I'm not saying it's not there for them, but it's not salient. Meaning I can't sense it, or I don't sense it rather. So could you speak about how those aspects make you unique in this space? And maybe unique isn't what you feel, but how does it add a standout factor, if any?
That's a good question. What I would say is you don't often hear about it in the industries that I work in because you have a product that is overshining, right? Or that is taking really the focus of whatever the event is, whatever the conversation is, whatever the marketplace structure is, right? But when you really look behind the curtain, it is something that is actually spoken about, right? Because in the fashion industry, the beauty industry, the entertainment industry are all industries where you have a mix of different people, right?
Yeah.
And so though it's just something that's not always promoted, but most times that is how I connect with people within these industries, is because it's like, oh dang, like
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like oh shoot, we struggling, like you know
Oh,
what I mean.
yeah.
We're all
Right.
feeling
I see. Yeah.
inflation right now, like wow, you know,
Mhm.
and to be honest, it builds a community, right? So it's
Mm.
like okay, great. Well, you say great. You're going through this. I'm going through this as well. What are maybe some tips that you're practicing, right? That I can adapt.
I see.
You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of looking out for each other. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
nice.
That's
Okay.
beautiful to hear. That's some education right there.
I
You know?
mean, well, yeah. It's always behind the curtain. You see the
Mhm.
show, but behind the curtain, I mean, it's people doing. It's
Yeah.
what is it? Glass and smoky mirrors. Is the saying
Yes.
that? There you
Oh,
go. Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
yeah, that's very
Mm.
true. Especially in LA, more than in New York. I mean, you kind of see that everyone's in a confined space, and we got this room to work with. In LA, it just looks great because of the views, but behind, everybody's like,
Oh,
"What the
wow.
heck are we doing?" You
Right.
know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is something we don't like usually hear about on like the everyday basis.
I know. So
Mhm.
You
hopefully,
kind
I'm
of just
not
see,
lying.
hey, exactly.
You,
Hey.
you hear that? Chaz just said behind those smoky mirrors and glass, there's a
Trust
lot of
me.
integrity in the world of
Mhm.
creatives, and that's beautiful to know and to hear, though.
But I would say this, right? Especially more so now. And when I
Mm.
say when I am speaking about creatives, I just want to be clear. I'm really talking about Black creatives, right?
Ooh.
Because I have a really great community. I've been blessed to be around so many great Black creatives who are not only just trying to get a check, but really care about their voice, their messaging, and how they are making a difference in the industry that they're working in.
I
You
see.
know,
Mm.
so I just wanted to focus that in a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, kind of looking back at your experience at LIM,
Mm-hmm. Take
we were
it
talking
back for
about
that.
we were talking about some like experiences that you had to go through or like patches. Were there any rough patches? And once again, we'll kind of talk about London and your world traveling excursions a little
Okay.
bit later. But yeah, were there times where you were like, I don't know if I can make this or make it through, or and when you did kind of get in those moments of doubt, what were some things that brought you out, and what would you advise to others?
Yeah, for sure. As I said, the word that will probably keep coming up as we speak is faith.
Mhm.
I will also have to use, being. I am a very tenacious person, and understand that it takes persistence to be able to yield a result.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember the first time that I was in New York. I actually was working at Tommy Hilfiger on Fifth Avenue. Who retail is tough.
Right.
And I was doing a summer class, and I was also a assistant to one of our friends actually in New York. And
Okay.
so it was just like I was going to class during the morning time. I
Mhm.
would have to leave class, go straight to work at Tommy Hilfiger, and then end my day with being an assistant and doing like 3 hours of work.
Ooh.
And I remember, I'm gonna be honest, the only time I don't cry, I do cry a lot actually, but I do not cry because I'm like overwhelmed with work.
Yeah.
I cry because it's usually like I'm grateful, like
Mhm.
I see.
But in that season, I was like, what is going on? Like this is aggressive, and
Mhm.
this is new for me. And so that for sure was a time period where I began to understand the importance of balance, but then
I see.
also to
Yeah.
understanding that in order to make certain things happen for you, it is
Mhm.
going to take you rolling up your sleeve and getting dirty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true.
So just
And
understanding, the balance between those two.
yeah, and I don't know if for you, Kevin, but I know for me there were some low points during
Hmm.
med school, and there was like one instance where it was like freezing outside, and like I was just laying in bed and just thinking, wow, I have a roof over my head,
Hmm.
like
Mhm.
my health is good, I have family, and it's just like, okay, right now is rough, but I still have support and I have like resources to kind of help keep me going.
Hmm.
So I don't know. For me, at least, it was just like you said, being grateful about the things that I do have, and just being like, okay, this is just another
Yeah,
hurdle to
and
get
and
over.
calling those things out, I think that is super helpful.
Hmm.
And what I always like for my friends when we're going through, valleys within our experience of life, you can't lose hope,
Right.
Yep.
because when you lose hope, that's how you lose the battle.
Mhm.
Mm.
The idea is to always say, okay, I can't lose hope. It will not always be like this, right? This
Yeah.
is not the way my life is going to be forever. Yeah.
Hmm.
I like that. That sounds like a word. When you lose hope, you lose the battle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Shout out to TD Jakes.
Right. I knew that sounded like TJ. So I'm gonna take you back to about 3 sentences when you say you don't cry, right? But then you correct
Right.
me.
Because
Right?
you know I cry.
Right. So can you expound on that for a little bit? Because obviously we know each other well, and you are one of the brothers who I think you're well in tune with your emotions, and emoting. It appears doesn't seem like it's something that you fight. How did you get there?
Honestly, having a parent who embraced and encouraged your emotions. Yeah, I have to be very honest about that. Like, you know, it's not anything. I am blessed to have a mother who encouraged me to communicate, right? And it's so funny because I remember to this day when I was younger, when I would get frustrated, like with my teachers, and you know, the one thing that I hated is when an adult would say, I'm talking, you can't talk, like, you know, because my mother at a certain age, not always, but at a certain age, she allowed us to have dialogue so that I could understand, you know, she was like, you know, tell me what you're feeling so that we can have an understanding. And when any adult was trying to correct me and they would not allow me to speak, it would frustrate me because I would feel like they were robbing me of that right, you know? So I would begin to cry because it's like, I'm trying to talk to you and communicate to you, but you're not listening, you know, you're not allowing that natural dialogue to happen. And so I would never forget a teacher called my mom and she said, you know, Chaz had, I probably did something wrong. I can't remember. Or either, you know, I'm going to be honest. And she was like, you know, he started crying. You know, I was telling him and my mom explained to her, you know, she said, and that was when I felt my mother's support. And I don't even think I ever told her this story. So thank you, Mom. But I overheard her speaking to my teacher and she was like, yes, that's because I really practice hearing him out and you know, him hearing me out, right? And so that has just followed me. That lesson has followed me throughout life. And so I am one where, yes, I definitely believe that crying is healthy. I believe being vulnerable in a safe space is very healthy as well. And I could definitely say that because of that learning and me practicing it more so in my brotherhoods today, it has allowed me to be who I am. And then also too, it has allowed great brotherhood to really exist. That's why y'all here.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And that actually, I don't know, that like hits close to home because once again, like I'm in like psychiatry. I went through the whole process, and like a lot of the patients that I do see, you can tell that their entire lives that they haven't been listened to. So when you do take the second to be like, hey, let's sit, let's chat, what's been going on? And then it all comes flooding out, like the tears, everything. And even being Black people, Black men, I don't know if I don't think there are spaces often where we can express that. So it comes out in anger.
Right,
it comes
absolutely.
out in the easier emotions. And I don't know, it's good to kind of speak on that and hopefully kind of change the narrative and open these spaces as well. So yeah.
I love that. That's so from your, you know, your perspective of life, like I'm sure there's so much that you could say about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And no, I was just gonna add that the value of us 3 Black men sitting here from completely different walks of life, talking about crying, and no one, I don't think you're soft. Certain Fred as a practice psychiatrist doesn't think you're soft. But I don't know if that narrative is out there on a macro level, which I think is interesting. What your mother gifted you reminds me of, and this is not my words, something I've either saw or read. We're saying that if you're raising a Black boy, what you want to do is love on him, and love on him to the profound point that he feels in the event, you know, he missteps or does wrong, that your disappointment becomes something that guides his action. And I'm not sure if that approach is right or wrong. Fred, you're the doctor, but I think there's a beauty on that in terms of love. and loving on a black boy as he grows, because I think it does impact the man. And you're one of my brothers that I see who emotes openly. And from you, I've actually learned the power of soft strength. And let's not even label it soft strength. Let's just call it strength. Strength through emotion.
A different definition of strength.
Correct.
Right.
And some part of me wants to tie it back to how you work and how you do work and how you collaborate. And I want to know, do you bring that in? And this is a genuine question because I don't know. Do you bring that strength into the way that you work, the projects that you take on, how you show up as a creative? How do you show up as Chaz Pringle?
So that's interesting because I'm working on a big project right now, which is a major event that will be launching next month. And someone who's new is another creative that is working with us on this project said to me, "Oh my goodness, Chaz work and Chaz outside of work are like two totally different people." Right? And of course, like there's some times where I come through, but me working, I am very much so different than I am the Chaz that's sitting right here, right?
Ooh.
And that's really just because I lived in New York City for 11 years, right? So coming out here to LA, I'm like, okay, put my answers through a filter, and like you definitely, I find that when I'm working, I am laser focused, and there's just certain times, like, especially if we're working against a deadline, I'm just like, okay, we really gotta buckle down. So I'm one that is very much so, and most of my latter career, right, I've been a manager. So I've had a team under me that I had to lead and direct. So I have a very short attention span when I understand that time is working against us in a sense. Yeah. But what I always try to lead with, of course, is understanding, right? Like life is lifing regardless on what you have going on.
So we had some technical issues, which is no big deal, but we're back. So we left off where you were talking about how your values and attributes, how you bring them into work. And interestingly, Chaz, we don't know, what is it that you do for work?
So it's an array of different things that I do. Right now, I am a creative consultant. For the past year and a half, I've been working with a company by the name of Skin Muse, which is a Black beauty brand. Our CEO, Ezine, has done an amazing job of building a brand that is catering to the Black woman. And I will add that it is not only catering to Black women, but it is now introducing itself to Black men as well. And so it's all about creating products that really nourish, moisturize, and take care of Black skin, and also carrying a message of we are all worthy of having luxury skincare to be able to tell our story. So it's been amazing. So I serve as head of partnerships and PR for Skin Muse currently. Given a little insight in terms of my day-to-day, it is very much so, especially this past week, being on phone conversations on aligning with partnerships with big brands like Pattern Beauty, Revolt TV, Essence. We're on the precipice of our annual Lemuse brunch, which I probably believe by the time that the viewers are viewing this, it would have happened. So make sure you go to Skin Muse Instagram page to review, the Lemuse brunch. We've been working really hard on it. Shout out to the team. But aside from that, actually, this is the first time that I have announced this publicly. My business partner, Chantel Simpson, and I are launching our new baby, which is Pringle Simpson, and it is a creative agency. And so we will be working with an array of different clients, really under the creative umbrella. And so that would vast from cinematography to short stories to branded content to events and much more. And so I am super excited and honored to be working with her. I mean, she is a wealth of experience. I can almost go into her resume. I tell her all the time, like, she's like, "Oh, this is so great that we're working together." I'm like, "No, I'm just honored working with you." To this day. Yeah, no, she's truly amazing. Released her own short film last year, which debuted at the Chinese Theater here in LA, as well as in New York and Atlanta. So shout out to you, Chantel. Very much so appreciate you. Yeah, and she just had a birthday like me, so shout out to her.
There you
Yeah.
go. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
With my gift. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm
This is
just
the
kidding.
gift.
Right.
So we talked a little bit about London.
Yeah.
How has like traveling the world like really influenced what you bring to work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as I told you, I went to school in LIM and I worked on Fifth Avenue at Tommy Hilfiger. And so my interest in international travel really started there because I was working this job as a sales associate, and I would have all of these, folks come in from China, Japan, London, all over Europe. And I really realized that I'm not able to I relate to them because I had never left the States. I went to like Toronto and I went on a cruise and we went to like, Puerto Rico and Bahamas and stuff. But in terms of like, leaving the States really in a big way, I had never done that. And so I had become interested and I was like, okay, there's an opportunity to study abroad. This is my sophomore year in college.
Yeah.
And initially I thought it was going to be Australia, Sydney, Australia. And then I looked up that ticket and I said, oh my God.
Yep.
Oh, when that girl wig fell off on that podcast and she said,
Oh,
my
yeah,
God.
I remember that moment.
Yeah. That definitely was me. And so I was crippled by how long the flight was. And my middle ground was London. And so I studied abroad with Dejanay Boy, who is one of my dearest friends to this day. Shout out to you, Dejanay. Both of y'all know Deshawn as his sister.
Yep.
And so, we, at the age of, this is wild, at the age of 20, we left New York, never been to London. We were so eager and dumb. I'm not gonna lie. We were dumb. We didn't even have proper transportation to take us like from the airport. We just were like, oh, we're gonna get there. We got there, literally got to the train station, did not know how to get to the school. So Dejanay, because I was so hungry because I didn't eat on the flight really, I had to go get food. She went to call the school to get like the address. It was bad. It was so bad. And so, we made it, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying this. And when we made it to the school, we were so drained from the flight. Of course, we're young. And I just remember Dejanay started to cry. And I was just like, D, we have come too far for us to cry. Like, we are going to make it. We are going to make it, And we did. And we traveled around. We went to Italy. We went to Croatia. And it was that moment that my exposure of life was expanded. And I realized that I could not just limit myself to New York City, but that there was a whole world for me to be able to go out and see and experience. And aside even from the visual aesthetic of this beautiful world, right? It was more so the connections that I made in London. My friends are still my friends today. I go to London a minimum once a year. And they come visit me and it's like, yo, like your family at this point, Yeah.
I used to call him London Chaz because man's turned into a road man. So really quickly, I'll give a 2-second backstory.
Be careful now. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
So one day we worked out. I believe this was a Thursday. It was a Thursday. We had met in the park and worked out in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And then I went to work out the second. Then I called you to see if you were going to work out with me.
Yep.
Right. And I was like, I said to him, Chaz, I'm at the park. Do you want to join me? And in trying to be humble, when Chaz has something good, he's trying to be humble. He's like, oh, bro, I'm sorry, I can't come. I said, why? And he turned the camera, major flex. And I'm in Brooklyn. Brooklyn's cold too. And major flex. He said, oh, I'm in London right now. I said, what? So he travels. You're a well-traveled man, right?
Maybe. Yeah.
You're worldly. And I'm going to ask you an ambiguous question. So interpret it, answer it in whatever way it strikes you. So what does success means for Chaz Pringle?
That has changed over the course of my journey of life.
Tell us about that.
I think about when I was in my early 20s, I was like, get this money. Money. I was like, let's go out to dinner in Meatpacking District. Let's go and shop. Let's buy the Benz. I still have not even owned a car to this day. To this day, I still haven't, like my 2 feet still, like I'm in New York. But right now, it's definitely being the hands and feet of God on earth. Right. And so what I mean by that, right, is being able to supply the needs of others in a very profound way, right? So homelessness is right outside our door
Yeah.
here in LA, right? Being able to feed the homeless, being able to give to them, being able to clothe the homeless, right? Being able
Right.
to provide support
Mhm.
for someone that is in an unfortunate situation. That is really what success is for me. Like that is super fulfilling for me, and I completely understand that that is the responsibility that I have been given in this season of my life. And so as my plate is continued to be filled, right, I'm not just trying to give the crumbs that are left over, but I'm
Yeah.
actually saving some of what's on my plate to be able to be impactful, right, and to a degree influential, because I want people to be able to, you know, say if it resonates with you, you feel inclined to do it from a genuine place.
Right.
Yeah.
So help me to understand. I understand the what. I understand what is important, right? Why is it important?
Why is it important? It's important because I truly do believe that it is better to give than to receive. And then I also know what it feels like to be in a place of life where you aren't able to provide for yourself as you would like. Right. So I understand that feeling of essentially, you know, people be like, oh my God, I got blessed. Right. Like I know the difference that it makes. I always go back to scholarships. There's students out there that really do want to go to school, but they can't afford it. Their parents can't afford it, right? They're in a bind. And so being able to write a check for even $500, which we know in LA is not a lot of money, right?
Yeah,
But it's and for someone that is equivalent to $5,000. And so, you know, for me, that's why it is so important, because I have been on the receiving end of where I've had my ecosystem, as I was talking earlier, those folks pour into me and see the difference that it's made in the opportunities that it's allowed me to walk into and essentially be where I am today in life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, kind of pivot a little bit. So, we definitely talked a little bit about like your kind of success in work and kind of like your personal self. But looking at your, I don't want to say love life, but more so bringing in a person, significant other.
Oh, yes.
What are some of the things that like
Kevin's
either
like
you
ready to
look
marry me
for?
off.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And you look for and essentially are hoping to find in your partner.
Yeah, so I can definitely say, like right now in my life, I look at two things, right? And so the first one is sacrifice, and the other is consideration. When it comes to love in particular, you know, I think that those are two pillars of love that aren't really spoken about, but are critical to creating longevity in any romantic situation, right? And so for me, it's really about continuing the self journey process of singleness to understand really who you are, right? And so for what I try to focus on is right now I am single, right? And singleness is a gift. So I'm taking the time to continue to develop myself, understand who I am, so that when I do find, or you know, I'm interested, and I'm like, yo, what's up? You know, like then I'm able to effectively communicate, right, and make sure that my person is comprehending who I am, saying I am, with verbally and with my actions, right? That's so important, you know. So I really do truly believe that it is about being patient with yourself so that when the time comes, right, you are able then to communicate, this is who I am, you know?
Gotcha. And definitely kind of like, once again, like nowadays people are just like, oh, let me hop into something and hopefully I can find myself, or pretty much you're kind of judging the other person, but you don't know what you're looking for in the first place. So it's kind of just like, are you even sure of what you want at this time,
Right.
or where you're going? And because if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to bring someone along with you?
Absolutely, because it's
So-
no one else's job to take care of you or show you the way. You are already whole in your singleness, right? And so it's two whole people coming together and creating a blended life. And so for me, that's how, you know, if I need to be whole, you know, you need to be whole, and then we're gonna do this thing together, and patience. I always say that time time with consistency breeds trust. And so it's like, don't worry, that person is going to show you who they are, so it's like, just allow time to do its thing, and you will understand if this is the person that's for you or if this is the person that's not for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And you did drop a gem like earlier when we cut out
What I said.
something. Yeah, you said something.
Okay.
So you were talking about you don't really believe in falling in love,
Very true. Yeah.
but you believed in
growing to love. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a gem. Please expound on that.
Yeah, so I said earlier how I do not believe in falling in love, because growing to love is allowing time to do its thing, right? And we're in essence, you will begin to fall, and well, you will begin to grow in love with the person that they are showing you, right? So you don't have to rush. I believe truly that falling in love can be very dangerous sometimes, right? Like you want time to do its thing. You want to be able to understand who that person is when they're upset, when they're depressed, when they're broke, when they have money, right? And that they remain consistent in terms of the way that you're treated, the way that they treat other people, right? So all of these, when you give time, is due diligence, right? It will give you the answers that's needed. Yeah. So for me, I aspire to grow to love.
Gotcha.
We ain't falling no more. We done did that.
There you go.
It ain't work. Yeah.
So, Chaz, your response and your outlook and your perspective is quite wise. And as I look around, because we're in your space, as I look around, I see books, right? And I'm not going to distill this question down to books. It can be much more expansive than that. But how do you fill your cup in terms of learning, in terms of wisdom? What are you consuming?
So I will say this: there are books here, but I'm not spending a lot of time reading all the books. I do love reading, and it is something actually this year that I am prioritizing, thanks to this guy. So on a daily basis, I'm cutting out time to definitely, read, and I'm enjoying it. But aside from reading, it goes back to traveling. I am really I love asking why. I love meeting new people and having open dialogue to understand, what are some practices maybe that they do within their daily structures, right? To help them yield to the success that they have, or either that they're looking to acquire. And then also too, going back to hope, right? How do you keep hope? How do you keep faith in what you are trying to chase after? And so that is a wealth of knowledge. I believe books are great, but I think, our initial instinct is dialogue, is right. So it's going back to that, like, and my family is Southern. We're from South Carolina. So it's nothing like sitting down on a Sunday, right? Or having a barbecue and doing exactly that. So I just try to bring that to wherever I'm going, whether I'm in Italy or whether I'm in New York or LA. I'm going to sit down and have a conversation with you and break bread, right? The cuisine may change, but it's always going to be the same foundation, which is dialogue. So, and I will, of course, have to say, speaking to my cabinets, and my ecosystem of wisdom to understand things that I don't understand and ask questions. And, lastly, I got to say, shout out to TD Jakes. He's definitely someone that's always on in my place. My neighbors, I'm sure they'd be like, dang, again, another one, but, pulling from, some goats that are out there, definitely TD Jakes. And I'm watching them old Oprah Winfrey shows as well to educate myself for people that have experienced life, right? Not only for where I'm trying to go, but also from places that I've come from as well. I would have to add that slavery and being sharecroppers is not far from my family. Like my great aunts worked on the field. My grandmother was the first generation that did not work on the field, and she could have, but she actually didn't like it. Like, she couldn't take it. So she was like, "No, Ma, I'm not gonna do that." So, learning that history of where my family has come from has definitely equipped me to be like, wow.
Oh yeah. And even just thinking about all the things that generations before have gone through, it's kind of thinking like, oh shoot, my car didn't start. It's like, walk.
Facts.
But it's little things like that that I don't know if it kind of just like stays with us, whether it's stories that are passed down or in our DNA, but it's kind of like we have this resilience that's
Absolutely. And that's where the hope comes in. I don't know why hope keeps coming up in this, but like
Yeah.
that is
Right.
where it comes in, because it's like there's no way, right, that I'm not able to be consistent and steward well over what I have when I have so much more than what my ancestors did, and they did a hell of a job, right?
Right.
You know?
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's the power of perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so you have a some watching this might think a unique perspective, right? But it's different because you're taking something that historically is not the greatest time in history for blacks on a global scale, black people on a global scale, and you pulled out something positive for yourself.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily common. So
Oh yeah, and even just kind of telling stories like this, we're sitting down having these conversations, hopefully kind of sharing a different story or a different side of like black people in America, black men in America. It's having these conversations on a larger scale. So hopefully letting others know, hey, how do I become a PhD? How do I become a psychiatrist? How do I go into consulting for fashion and have multifaceted business? It's things like that. So definitely appreciate like you speaking it with us today. Gonna do kind of like a lightning round.
Okay.
Like
let's go for it. Let me wait. Let me get ready. Let me get ready.
Go for it.
Lightning. Let's go.
All right. What is your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? I would have to say Lion King.
Ooh,
so many lessons in that movie.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. It's on brand. It's a good one.
Yeah.
So many lessons.
What book are you currently reading?
Oh my goodness, this one right here, which is The Greatest Salesman.
Let's grab it.
Oh, no, they're not paying me. No, I'm just joking. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's this one right here. Yep, Greatest Salesman in the World.
And if you could change one thing in the world, what would it be?
You know what? It would be. That's a really good question. I don't know exactly what would it be, but whatever it would be, the intentions of it would be to really help us align more. So it doesn't matter, like, you know, where you're from, what your culture is. We will all have an understanding of who we are as individuals. Yeah.
What's your most valuable value?
What's my most valuable value? Oh, that's a lot of them. You know, it's a lot of them. But what I would have to say right now is reciprocity.
Reciprocity. Okay.
You know that this is my thing. We have this thing like where everyone knows. Like I'm like, we need this. I'm in meetings and I'm just like, we need to talk about this, right? Like, yeah, like it's reciprocity. And it's and the reason why, I know I didn't ask one time. The reason why is because it's something that our generation does not value, right? Everything is so self-inflicted. Yeah. So it's like, you know, or selfish rather. Like everything is me. Right. But when you are making sure that in your relationships there's true, genuine reciprocity, it will always be fruitful.
Wow.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
So once again, just want to thank you so much for like sitting down. This is not going to be the end of our conversations. We're going to bring you on for some more because I feel like we have still so much more to unpack.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And I have to say, like, thank y'all for providing this outlet and insight for so many that, you know, need to hear it and continue on, because it's for sure needed. There's so many people, we're so different, but at the end of the day, right, we're all essentially wanting better for ourselves and others.
Yes. Yeah. So welcome to the club.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Let's go, bro.